Hi everybody. For this lesson of Sonic Pi, we are going to be taking a look at the loop samples that are available in Sonic Pi. A lot of these include drum beats, so sort of pre-made drum beats. In the last lesson, we took a look at how to make our own drum beat, sort of working off a drum grid program. But now we're going to look at these live loops, and these are very similar to what we've referred to as break beats. So a pre-recorded drum beat in a song where all the other instruments drop out and we just have the drums playing, and then we take that little snippet of the drums and we just loop it over and over to create a drum beat that we can then add more stuff to. Okay, so in Sonic Pi, when we do sample, we have this whole list of samples here, and eventually if you start scrolling down, you get drums, you get the elects, the glitch, the guitar. We get to this part where we have all these loop samples, these samples that begin with the word loop. Okay, so these are all samples that are made specifically to play in a loop. So from beginning to end, when you loop it, it basically just sounds continuous. There isn't like a clear beginning and a clear end. It just plays over and over and over and over again. All right, so I'm going to start with this loop Amen. Now this is from a song called Amen Brother by the Winstons, which was an older song in the 70s, but a very popular, maybe the most popular breakbeat that has been sampled in music. It's been sampled in thousands of songs. Okay, so if I just play it, okay, we just hear this quick little drum break that plays. All right, I'll play it again. Okay, so that if we took that drum beat and just played it back to back to back to back to back, it would sound like it just continuous drum breaks. To show you what I mean here, I'm gonna maybe play it 2 times, and then I'm gonna do sleep for sample duration, and then again I'll just do this loop Amen. So it'll play this, and then it'll, with the sample duration there, it'll just sound like the sample is playing 2 times in a row. Okay, so now what I could do is I can make a live loop here, which I'll call Amen, and then I just need a do and an end. Okay, and then this just loops, and it just sounds like this continuous drum beat playing over and over and over again. All right, so that is how live loops work, or I'm not live loops, I'm sorry. That is how these loop samples work. So any sample that begins with loop, if we did the sample duration, we can just play it over and over and it just sounds continuous, okay? But we're gonna run into a problem doing it this way if we want to then add other sounds to go along with it, okay? So let me show you what I mean here. I'm gonna very quickly just go puts sample duration Amen loop. Okay, so this number here, okay, to go back, this number here, this 1.75331, etc., that is the sample duration. That is the length of this sample, okay? So if I were to take this number and put it here, okay, that is what I get, all right? But then, let's say I decide to make a live loop called bass, and I want to have a bass sound. So I'm going to maybe do use synth. I will do, I like this sub pulse for the bass, and I'll just play maybe like 40. Okay, or maybe I'll make a ring just of 40 and then like 47 dot tick. And then here's the thing now. If I want it to play, say I just want to do that, okay? And now I'm going to go back to this idea of like the sample duration, because I'm obviously not going to be copy and pasting numbers. And so if we were to have sample duration here for the Amen loop, okay, we now know that that number is like a weird decimal point number. So if I do sleep for 1, they just don't line up. They sound very offbeat. They are not connected to each other, all right? So that now runs me into a problem. So I want this bass to line up to that drum beat there, okay? So there's a couple of ways that I can do this, all right? So the first way that I could do that is something called, at the top, I'm gonna set my BPM, but there's a function called use underscore sample underscore BPM, okay? And then when I press space, it already gives me the drop down menu of all the samples. So I'm just gonna type in loop amen. Okay, so now what it's gonna do is, instead of the sample duration, it's gonna say, all right, whatever the length of this sample is, that is gonna be the BPM. So now it's just, instead of me doing the duration or 1.7 whatever, I just do sleep for 1. Okay, so by using the sample BPM, it sets the BPM to 1. Okay, well, not the BPM is 1. It just basically makes 1 beat equal to the length of the sample. So now if I run it, okay. So now you hear how it's more evenly lined up, okay, which is great. There's still something a little weird here in that 1 is not how many beats are in that loop. It's how it's 1 time through the loop is 1, okay? Which is fine if you want to play around with it. To me, I hear the beat, I'm nodding my head to the beat. It's not I nod every time the loop comes back around. I'm nodding to the beat, okay? So if I were to, I'm going to take this out for a second. So I have like a beat here. This is the beat. Okay, and just so you can kind of see, I'm going to put puts. I'm just going to write the word restart. This is another interesting thing you can do with puts, is it's going to just throw the word restart here every time it goes through this loop. Okay, so you see it coming around again and around again, right? So I can kind of, it's not every beat. So here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing this faster beat inside of that loop. So to me, that loop, if I were to count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So in this sample, the sample to me takes 4 beats before it loops back around again, right? So there is an option I can add to this use sample BPM, which is called num_beats. Okay, and after the colon, it turns pink. Remember, I need a comma here. So here I can put 4. So I can say, I think this lasts for 4 beats, and you can think it, you can ultimately make the decision. You can say, I want this to be 5 beats between the time it starts and the time it finishes, okay? But usually when dealing with drum beats, you're gonna have like 2 or 4 or 8. So one of those even numbers. So now, if I go in here and change this to 4, so the number of beats it takes for this sample to play is gonna be 4, therefore I need to sleep for 4. So we're not gonna hear any difference, okay, with just the sample, but now if I go in and add this bass again, instead of it playing 1 note every time through the sample, we're gonna hear a note play on every beat, which is gonna make it feel a little bit faster. Okay, so, and I could change that. Maybe I could make it 2. If I wanted to play it 1 time through the sample, I could make it 4. Okay, I could, do a ring, maybe like 3 and 1 look. So I can play around, but this just kind of gives me more options about what I can do with this. Okay, so that's one way that I can evenly loop stuff up with that. I'm gonna just again comment this out. Okay, so there's another way I could do it as well. I'm gonna comment this one out. Okay, so what I could do here is there's something called beat stretch. There's an option for the sample, similar to like there's attack, there's decay. We took a look at like pitch and rate and those things. There's another one that's called beat stretch, okay? And it auto completes there. So beat stretch is gonna take, I can change the duration of the loop, okay? So this is basically gonna affect the rate, which means it's gonna sound a little faster, a little slower, depending on what I do. So if we remember going back to what I did, puts sample duration of the amen. If I Oh, because the beat stretch here. Hold on. So if I were to, again, put that up, if we remember, that is this 1.7. So I'm going to beat stretch it. I'm just going to round it up to the closest sort of even number, which is 2. Okay, so beat stretch now, instead of, and I'll actually show you this. So if I were to put this amen sample with the loop here, now you see that the duration when I beat stretch it to 2, the duration is 2. So now what I can do is, I'll just get rid of this. If I run it, I need to make sure I'm sleeping for the same number I beat stretch as. Okay, so I stretch the beat, so now it's an even 2 beats, or even 2 seconds, whatever that sample duration counts for. All right, so it's now an even 2. Okay, and then I can go back and I can add this as well. Keep this even as well. So now I would play. Okay, so now I've beat stretched it to 2. So now the sample itself is 2. And you'll notice that the sample sounds a little lower in pitch than it did when we played it originally, okay? Because beat stretch does affect the rate, all right? Now here's another thing about beat stretch. We don't have to just use it for the loop samples. We can use it for any sample, all right? So I'm gonna do live loop here. I'm gonna call this one moon, and you'll see why in a moment, okay? So I'm gonna use the sample ambi lunar land, okay? Which is a long sample. It's like 10 something, like 10 and some decimal points here, okay? But I'm gonna do beat stretch and make it 4. And then if I sleep for 4, now the sample will last for 4 beats, and if I sleep for 4 beats, it's just going to constantly loop it. So this makes the sample fit nice and neat into a certain number of beats that I can then match up with this loop sample that I have, and maybe another thing going on here. So you hear it come in. Just add some amp there so we can really hear it clearly. Every 2 times through the loop, this sample comes back in. So this is an interesting way to work with longer samples to make them fit evenly into what you are doing, okay? So you know you're going to play the entire sample, and then when you get to the end of the sample, it's going to come back around again evenly with all the other things you have going on. Okay, now you could sort of use these all together. So I'm going to maybe, instead of using beat stretch for my loop sample, I'm going to keep consistent with this use BPM, but then I'm still going to have another sample where I do use beat stretch in addition to having this other sound going as well. Oh, and what don't we like? Oh, I still have this comma here. So notice that speeds it up a little bit, okay? So there's going to be some difference between tempo depending on which one of these you use, which numbers you use. For example, here, maybe I want this to last for 8, and this for 8. Maybe I want these to play every 4 beats. Okay, maybe I want the bass to go faster. All right, so there you have it. Some sounds a little glitchy with what's going on. It might just be my computer today, okay? But there you have it, okay? So that's how we can work with different loops in there, okay? One last thing I want to show you. I'm going to link to this drive folder where I have a few different breakbeats in it, okay? So these are all other breakbeats, okay, that are looped drum beats that aren't in Sonic Pi that I've collected over the years. So say you go into this, okay, I download the file, okay, it gives me this Apache. I then, inside of my computer somehow, I'll search, I'm gonna go to my downloads folder, It'll bring me up my Finder window, where it is somewhere. Here we go. Okay, I go to downloads, and there's that Apache one there, okay? So then, if we remember, just to show you quickly, I have this file. I'm gonna drag it in, okay? I'm thinking now, though, as I do this, these are MP3s, which will not work in Sonic Pi. So what I will do is I will go into that folder and I will replace those with a different file type that will work. But let me just bring that up real quick. I know I have somewhere in my in this Mac, I have a version of that. So we'll go by name here: Apache MP3, Apache Beat, Apache. I believe it would be like .aif, if I can check. No, it's not in there. All right, well, trust me though, you can drag it in and it will work. Maybe I have another one. I apologize for this. I should have double checked. I could check like Funky. I think I might have one of these. Funky Marimba, Funky Drummer. Here we go, Funky AIF. Okay, so this is that funky one here. So I drag it in here. Okay, very quickly, I'm gonna just call it funky. I make a variable to store that, okay, and then I can just add funky here and funky here, and then I run it. Okay, now that's gonna have a real effect on, you know, sort of the length of stuff, the speed of stuff. Okay, so maybe I want to change the number of beats. You can experiment, okay? But what I really would just want to show you is how I'll provide you with some other loops that you can play around with if you so desire, or you can just work with the loop samples in there, all right? So that is it. Here is the reference sheet that I've provided. It talks about using use sample BPM. It talks about changing sample duration with beat stretch, okay? The checklist, I want to see you using a loop sample in a live loop, use sample BPM to evenly sample that. You use beat stretch, change the duration of a sample and loop it, and then just include a synth sound with the play function just as an addition, okay? So this would be an example of what that project might look like with all those things happening. I have beat stretch, I have use sample BPM, I have another synth here, okay? So hope you have some fun with that, and looking forward to see what you come up with for the music assessment or music engagement project for this week.